And thank you everyone for being here because there are a lot of really great presentations happening right now. One is, about the Cal MHSA peer certification here in California. I'm sure that's of great interest. But fortunately, we're all being recorded, and so people can go back and access all of the content. And I just love that about Share's, community building approach, where we're not in competition with each other just because we're presenting at the same time. We're just building a library of resources. And peer support for persons who identify as neurodivergent is not for everybody, right? It was definitely where the road of my life was leading. And so, it's just like any type of lived experience. If it's your own lived experience, then you're going to be the right person to go into that role, and rather than to try to support people that you don't get their lived experience and they don't get yours. The best facilitator is someone who has that lived experience. So that's why I wanted to lead with this slide. But I also just want to ask people, if you want to put in the chat or raise your hand, what made you choose to come to this particular presentation? What is calling to you about the topic of providing neuro-affirmative peer support? Not to put you on the spot, we'll just take a moment if anyone wants to raise their hand or put something in the chat. Please go ahead, Sunny.
Hello. Yeah, this attracted me because I have lived with a diagnosis of ADD. Well, it was called ADD when I was diagnosed. Now I think it's just a general term for ADHD. So I am neurodivergent. I feel it 100% anytime I read anything about neurodivergency. And I would like to learn. I'm a mental health educator for a peer-run organization, MHASF, and I'd like to learn more about working with other neurodiverse individuals and how to best be an educator for them.
Oh, that's so great. Thank you, Sunny. I'm so happy that you're here. And I see Amanda put in the chat, I have an autistic son and curious. I also have ADHD as well as my son. Yeah. So thank you both for your courage to share a little bit. And I know there's a couple of people in the room are here because I invited them. And I so appreciate their coming for support. So thank you. So yeah, this is just the kind of thing that if anyone had ever asked me if I would be presenting about this, I would have said no. But after doing this group for a couple of years, I realized that we have something really special, and I kind of felt a little guilty, right? Like, I should present about this, that we have something to say. So it's like, for me, it's a form of advocacy to share about this. And Michaela says, working with children with autism. That is so great. Has anybody heard of the DIR floor time? It's a play-based intervention. I'm getting a certification in that as well. And Bianca says, with so many late stage diagnosis. Oh my gosh, that's so true. The demographic has grown drastically, and I'm pretty sure I have it as well. So learning tools would be beneficial for support of myself and others. Yeah, I've found that having combined groups where we have persons with various kinds of neurodivergence in the same support group has really been an incredible model for us. A lot of times we have, it's called, it is a play-based and affect and social communication-based intervention. So it's basically like completely like the opposite way of working from the behavior therapies. And I'm not going to take away from the behavior therapies, but this is like a bottom up way of working with a lot of movement and play and affect and all of that. So it was ironic when I started taking this to work primarily with children, again, within the scope of practice of a peer supporter. What I realized was a lot of these things that they're teaching me are things that we're already doing in our adult groups. So it's like all roads lead to Rome. Another thing I want to say and then I promise I'm going to start the official part of the presentation. There's a couple things I didn't put on the slide, but I spent a lot of time learning about somatic trauma therapies, again, like in a paraprofessional way and certification type of trainings. And I think that those have really served me very, very well in doing this work. But I guess I just didn't want to put that on the bio. I don't know why. Okay, so here I want to throw out a definition of neurodiversity, and would love if anyone has any comments in the chat. Neurodiversity is like a landscape. It's similar to biological or cultural diversity. And the landscape of neurodiversity sees minds as a complex ecosystem. So you're going to have say your deer and your toads and your hawks and your little plants growing, and all these different kinds of minds are going to coexist in this ecosystem. Some conditions that are classified as disorders, diagnoses, are normal differences. When do they become disabling? They become disabilities when there is not a good fit between the mind and the environment. And this impacts the person's quality of life. So would love any feedback in the chat that people have to that. Oh, hello, Carla. Carla's checking in. I'm neurodivergent autism PDA profile and ADHD. My 2 adult daughters were diagnosed last year with autism. My 2 grandsons at 3, autism and ADHD. There's those co-occurring diagnoses again. Neuro-affirmative family sees the positives within. We are differently wired, not less than. I love your advocacy. And Amanda, please go ahead.
I can second that. I think that it's just they're different. They're special in different ways. They're wired differently. It doesn't make them less than. It just makes them different, which is not a bad thing. I mean, some of the smartest people in the world are just different. They weren't walking and talking at a normal age, but that doesn't make them less than. I think I love that you said it's like a biological and cultural, it's a complex ecosystem. We need all of us together to create this beautiful world we have. If everybody was the same, we wouldn't ever grow or change.
I love your comment. Thank you so much for sharing, Amanda. Thank you. And, thinking about neurodiversity means that you can have all different kinds of minds, and they all are within the scope of normal. So the next slide kind of picks up from this and talks about some of the impacts when people's quality of life is affected by a poor fit between how their mind works and the things that they are asked to do from their environment. These are some of the examples. Yes, that's a great comment, Carla. I would like to say the difficulty has more to do with a social world that values the neurotypical brain. Acceptance of different minds in society is crucial. That's right, because there's a longitudinal study that's very important that came out of the Autism Research Center in the UK by Simon Baron-Cohen and colleagues. And so longitudinal means that they followed people across their lifespan. And so you learn about how being neurodivergent affects people at different stages of life. A lot of us know more about what's going on with the kiddos. More and more, we now are having those of us in middle age get diagnosed. But these are some of the impacts of the poor quality of life over the lifespan: increased loneliness, low self-esteem, anxiety and depression, chronic illnesses, a shortened lifespan, and suicide risk. There's a lot of stigma. And so I'm going to share a couple of slides of members of our group that talk about this in just a second. But what can we do? And that's what brings us here today. We can create neuro-affirmative peer support spaces as micro environments, like greenhouses or little shady areas or little sunny spots that give people some respite from the mainstream tasks and pressures of the macro environment. So these micro environments are where peers can develop resilience so that we can better navigate the macro environment. And this enhances our quality of life. So these peer support spaces offer respite on the one hand, but they are also, so they're safe spaces, but they also offer opportunities to practice and develop resilience. And so they're brave spaces. And that is what the groups that I provide are about. So here is a quote from an anonymous quote from someone who has been coming to the group. Life has taught me to never be myself. I had a friend tell me I'm an acquired taste, and I'm great until the novelty wears off. It turns out the autism doesn't go away with time. I think this is why I just prefer to spend most of my time alone. I don't have to try to be what everyone wants, and I can just be a fool with cats. It wasn't until I stopped trying to be someone else that things in my life started getting better. So this is such a perfect description of those quality of life impacts, such as, loneliness and poor self-esteem and the negative, impacts, so that we isolate, we don't feel we deserve support. There are, in fact, some beliefs that persons who are neurodivergent don't want support groups, that they like to be alone, that those of us with ADHD are overstimulated by groups or dysregulated by groups, and persons with autism are not social and they don't want to come to a group. But these are really myths. These are not what we have found. We will talk about some special considerations as we go along about how to make the group spaces more comfortable for persons who have different sensory needs. Yes, thanks for that, Amanda. Okay, another voice of a member. Being with other neurodivergent people in a social setting is helpful to me because dyadic communication can foster walled-in thinking, sending me down a rabbit hole. I think that you think that I think, and so it goes. So this is a person who obviously has a lot to say, has a lot of unusual language use, and yet the message is clear that there's something really important about being in a social group, that it is less, I won't say frightening, but less activating, and that that there's a sort of a form of the hive mind or the social thinking that the group members have reported is very comforting and often very new. So what are qualities that can make a group neuro-affirmative? I think this is just a short list. There could be many more added to this, but these are some that we have found are important. Being predictable. I have noticed that some peer support groups maybe don't have a predictable format, or they change their meeting time or day at the last minute, or they cancel, or you have a different facilitator whom you don't know. And these type of things really create feelings of anxiety and lack of safety in this population. So it is much preferable to make a commitment to have it at the same time, have a similar format, have the same person there. And if there has to be any change at all, discuss it like quite in advance so that people can start to get used to the idea. Yes, structure. That is very, very important. And we have a whole slide on an example of a structure. So we're going to get to that. And Joseph says, what a beautiful anonymous voice. Yes, yes. We will pass that along to the person. Thank you. Okay, strengths based. I was just in the supervision talk right before this one. I love Jonathan Edwards and that group of collaborators. I think that with any luck, they are going to make our professional lives so much easier through their work. So peer support absolutely has to be strengths based. And how often are those of us that have a diagnosis or have symptoms that fall into the area of neurodivergence, we are so focused on those symptoms and on what we can't do. And so we have found that we do, of course, allow the conversation to go into those areas, but we don't get stuck there. And the group does not become just like a woe is me session, right? So we stay strengths based. We are neurodiversity informed, which means that we have done just some basic kind of reading. You don't have to be an expert on anything about what are all the different ways that people could show up on the neurodiversity map, the neurodiversity landscape. Neurotypical, autistic. Some people have psychosis spectrum disorders because of differences in their neurology. That's a kind of way of being neurodiverse. Each facilitator can kind of find out what kind of a mix works with your particular group. But we have had a wide variety of different kinds of minds, in our group. And I do find it very helpful if the person facilitating does not just have tunnel vision, like I only know about my particular thing, if it's ADHD or autism, and I don't know anything about anything. Again, we're not experts, but we want to understand like the big picture of what is this landscape that we're walking through. Non-stigmatizing language. I've got a great link on the resource slide about that. But there can be ways that we might speak, and so we want to make sure that we stay up to date on ways to speak about being neurodivergent. Right now there's a lot of, some people say, well, I prefer to just be called autistic. I don't want to be called a person who has autism. But we definitely want to create a safe space where if anyone uses a term that does not feel affirmative to others, that we, have a way for people to be like called in and, oh, by the way, we've had an update on the language there. We just want to, let everyone know. Yeah, so that's one of the features. Being non-judgmental. There are people that don't want to come on camera. There are people that want to hold a pet. There are people that may have a lot of interesting things in their environment. They may be in their vehicle. They may be have a lot of belongings. They, people are going to come to these groups in a lot of different like states that is their state. And so, the idea that everyone should look a certain way, dress a certain way, have a certain way of relating or a certain type of environment is just not realistic. So the non-judgmental attitude is so important. And I included non-coercive as well, because to me, one of the biggest ways to run people off in the neurodivergent population is to say, well, we all have to do this now, because that is just like that's how we've been living in the mainstream ecosystem. And so being, very careful to be invitational and not be everybody has to share at the check-in, everybody has to be on camera, everybody has to come every single time. There's such an overlap with having experienced traumas, for persons whose sensory systems work differently, and being in situations, in education or in our families of origin, that we do have to be very trauma informed to have a successful neurodivergent group. So, agreements. We have found in our group that these agreements have worked very well for us. So we just want to share them. Feel free, of course, to create agreements that work for you and your populations. But I've been to groups that have 20 agreements, and they use a lot of big words. I have been to groups that have a lot of negative agreements. We have one big negative agreement, the middle one: we don't give advice. In some ways, that's our most important agreement. We have found that it creates such a safe space that when someone shares in our group, they know that no one is going to say, well, you should have done it differently, or you should do it like I did it, or here's a list of resources for you. We're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to share out of our own lived experience. So my lived experience, is personally with ADHD, and that has led to a lot of like sideways experiences, right? With, some substance use disorder, with alcohol, with some borderline personality features, even though I don't have that diagnosis. And so our lived experience can have a lot of like sideways stuff associated with it. Um, you know, but, it, but it's really worked well in our group that I don't start trying to tell a member whose diagnosis is autism spectrum disorder, oh yes, this and that about your disorder, or even giving a lot of like factoids off of the Wikipedia or something. The best gift that we can give in a support group, we have found for this particular population, is just those personal shares out of our own lived experience. I've kind of said these out of order. I apologize for that. But, we have a climate of respect for ourselves and one another. And that really does go a long way. The nice thing about having a short list of agreements is, what if a conflict arises, and someone is not doing one of these things? It's really easy for the facilitator to say, I'd just like to remind everyone of our agreement that we respect each other. And I'd like us to refocus this, what we're talking about right now, back to the topic that we're here tonight to discuss, right? Or if someone starts giving advice or something like that, we can say, I just want to remind everyone that we have a no advice agreement. Instead of giving advice, we share out of our own lived experience. And that's always the best gift. We take turns listening and speaking. That one really is very kindergarten in a way, and it really, to me, sums up the idea that we don't have to have 10 different agreements about different things. We just have these few, and we maintain reasonable confidentiality. I am a mandated reporter, and so I do, give the talk, especially when someone is new. Have a very short talk about that. And, in our group, we are an online group, and we know that sometimes someone may walk through the background of the space. Someone may have a pet there. A child may come in, and we have found that it's really important that we consider confidentiality to be something attainable and reasonable. And if we see something that we feel is outside of our agreements, we have a discussion about it and we work things out. But keeping simple, practical agreements, and especially that no advice rule, has really allowed us to have a very safe community experience. So the best gift, yes, thank you for that. So going on, and we just have, I think, maybe 3 more slides, and then I'll share the resource slide, and then we can open it up and have some discussion. So a format that we have used that has worked well for us has been an open check-in. That can take a different amount of time depending on how many people are in the room, and just something kind of basic like, how are you today and how has your week been? We do have weekly groups, and so it's kind of been nice to do it like that. I guess I would say I've already, read the agreements prior to this. So the open check-in, people, raise hands and we go around, and it's totally optional. No one, must check in. And then we have a topic related to neurodiversity. At the beginning, the first year of the group, a topic would emerge during the check-ins, and we still find that happens. So there might be some similarities with the things that people are wondering about in their lives. And so for the first year of the group, these became the topic. And so we would, for instance, one week talk about a topic like employment-related stress and navigating employment as a neurodivergent person. We've talked about family relationships and navigating that, if that was what came up in the open check-ins. Around the holidays, we talked about being with family of origin or other ways that we were choosing to cope and celebrate with the stress of the December holidays. We've talked about relationships. We've talked about health. So we spend the majority of the group time discussing the topic, and we try to stay to our group values, our group agreements, and discuss the topic not in an abstract, impersonal way. Occasionally, we will say, I saw a video about that, and they put it in the chat. Or, here's a website that has a lot of resources on that. That's totally fine. But the main usefulness of a group like this is relating that topic to our own lived experience. Oh, these were my struggles navigating my workplace as a person with this particular diagnosis. And someone else says, oh yeah, I had a different struggle, or this is a solution that I used when I had that struggle. And so talking out of our own lived experience is really, our best gift for one another. And people will get the most wonderful affirmations from the other group members out of our lived experience shares. And people's self-esteem goes up. They're like, wow, I didn't know I was like that cool. I've never been cool before, but 3 people just told me what I said was awesome. Oh my gosh, I'm kind of liking this, right? So it just really is like a virtuous cycle, a positive feedback loop. I just want to circle back to the way we select our topics. And we're now in our, I guess, second and a half, 18 months to 2 years of our group. So we've changed a little bit, and I found some YouTube videos on different persons with lived experience that have very good things to say, like neuroscience-based things to say. And so we've been watching often a 10-minute or less video after our open check-ins, and then we discuss the topic that was raised in the video. And I've got a couple of those in the resource page. So it's okay to mix it up and make it multimedia. It could be okay to have some exercises, you know, some art things or creative writing thing. I mean, each facilitator has special strengths. And so, I think people should feel quite empowered and not say, oh, I'll hurt the neurodivergent people if I try to do art or something. I mean, I'm just making that up, obviously. But I think, to just keep everything going slow and always relating it back to how we navigate our lives. And then a structured checkout, usually like the last, depending on how many people are in the group, maybe 10 minutes. Our checkout could be something like, what is something you're looking forward to? Or what is some kind of self-care that you're going to do in the next week until we're together again? I just want us to always end on a feeling of being empowered for the week in between the groups. Um, so that's like a really simple format that leaves a lot of room for people to tailor it to your facilitation style and to the needs and desires of your group members. Okay. A few considerations for virtual spaces. How many, you can just put it in the chat, are doing more virtual spaces than physical spaces? Or you can put, show of hands or something like that. Anybody? You're saying yes. Yes, another yes. I see Bianca as a yes. So I'm doing almost 100% virtual spaces. So I wanted to have a slide about some special considerations for virtual spaces. Keep the text simple. Like, do not make people have to go jump through a lot of hoops to find your meeting, to get into your meeting. Because the more complex we make it, the less likely it is that people can remember it, find it, the same Zoom meeting every time or whatever tech you're using, the same format every time. Make it easy. And when you're in a virtual space, pay attention to the nonverbals because, you know, people that are on camera, you can see like if you're losing them sometimes, and also pay attention to your own nonverbals. I tend to get a little bit like overly emotional or overly nonverbal communicator when I'm on Zoom because I don't want to just be sitting here talking head and all these people, they don't know if I like them, they don't know if I'm happy to be here. I'm just this talking head. I mean, I don't want to be that. So I ham it up a lot. That's just my facilitation style. But whatever your style is, pay attention to if somebody looks distressed in their space, like check on that person. If somebody seems, like they're not with you, like in a kind way, like, try to bring that person in. Like the nonverbals in Zoom spaces are a real area that we can tell how people are doing. So use the raised hands. I like the raised hands because it can create such a accidental bad feeling if two people start talking at the same time. So we've just gotten in the habit of people put up their hand, and if two put up at the same time, I'll say so and so and then so and so, and it's just allowed us to be like really smooth. Accept distractions, cats, children, um, people going off camera to go take a bio break. People could have some wild background with flashing lights, and like just like tuning out a lot of distracting things and focusing on we're here to build community, we're here to discuss this topic, we're here so that everybody that leaves this space has greater self-esteem, higher quality of life, feels more empowered, has gained skill, feels less alone, just focusing on what I'm here for. And if somebody, is wearing a weird hat or is holding a bird, it's like, I'm just going to tune it out. I'm going to just do my thing, right? Privacy concerns. This is one that has come up a lot with Zoom because Zoom has now allowed these AI things and these meeting settings that just automatically come on that allow people to probably accidentally save transcriptions of everything that everyone says in the meeting or save the chat. And like, I had to go in because in the middle of a meeting, someone accidentally clicked one of those things and it notified us all. It was kind of like the notification that your meeting is being recorded, only it was a notification that someone is recording a transcription of everything that we're saying. And we're like, we can't be having that. And so uh, we I had to go in and change my global Zoom settings so that no more of my meetings would ever have that thing. And Zoom or whatever you use is going to be adding new things all the time that do affect people's privacy. So another thing is people may want to not use their regular name. They might want to use a pseudonym. People might not want to be on camera. People might be wondering if someone is writing things down about them. If someone is on camera and taking notes, um, then that could cause a privacy concern for another member. So that's something we've had to discuss sometimes in our group about, if someone is going to be writing things down, please assure us that these are not things like writing down what we are saying or something like that, or screenshotting us. So we do want to assume good faith, but if anything does happen in the meeting, I have found it's best to just drop everything and deal with the elephant in the room, so to speak. And then we can get back to the meeting after we. Yes, it was a setting that turned itself on in my global Zoom settings. And so I had to go like turn it off forever. I don't really know how it happened. It may have been something that our manager who manages all of our Zoom accounts might have enabled. I really don't know, but it was one of those moments where the group had to decide if we trust each other, and we had to decide, okay, we're going to stay in the meeting. Nobody is going to use that feature, and the facilitator is going to make sure that feature is disabled the next time we come back. And if someone doesn't want to stay in the meeting, I think a participant decided they felt safer to not stay. And so that was okay too, but we went slow and we talked it all out. Absolutely, Sunny. The note taking, there are persons who constantly journal and doodle because it helps them concentrate. And there are other persons who feel that someone might be writing down things about them. And so this is something I have found that has to be negotiated in the moment, when it's happening. Keeping an eye on the chat. It can be very hard to do if there are two facilitators. One person could kind of monitor the chat. Because of my ADHD, can multitask, maybe not that well. I might leave one thing undone to do the other, but I do task switch just to notice if a member, for example, is giving advice to another member in the chat. I will want to put in the chat, please be mindful of our no advice agreement, and things like that. Finally, building community. Building community. So groups can decide if they want to exchange contact and get in touch with each other between meetings. This is something that some groups would want to do and other groups would not want to do. But this particular group does want to do that. And so members will support each other in between the meetings. And I like that. But whatever building community looks like to your group, it could mean having multiple groups with the same or different facilitators. It could be that members will grow into becoming facilitators of groups of their own. It's just beautiful to have a group or groups grow into a true community. And I think that is, what I want to end on as far as like my goal, because that is what combats those poor outcomes in terms of quality of life, is when neurodivergent persons feel that we are a valuable member of a community. So a few resources, and these will be for you in the what do we call it? The recordings. The Avoiding Ableist Language has a lot of practical suggestions. The evidence-based support for autistic people across the lifespan. That's the one that Simon Baron-Cohen was also one of the co-authors. It was in the Lancet, which is a very important medical academic journal, and a couple of our online resources that we like, the Neurodivergent Clinician and the Neurodivergent Doctor. They are persons who have a foot in both worlds, and they have a lot of very nice, practical neuroscience-based information that is also a little bit fun. And we like to have fun when we come together in our groups. So we try to not just talk about what is wrong, but talk about what is right, and affirm each other, because our groups are neuro-affirmative. So I guess I'm going to, after this, stop the share and ask people just to have an open discussion. What are your questions and concerns and your interests, of course, when you think about facilitating a neuro-affirmative peer support group? And that's my final slide. That's my email, which I can put in the chat also. And I'll just stop the share right there. Thank everybody for your time and attention. And just open it up for chat questions or raised hands and discussion of, how does this apply to your life? Are you wanting to facilitate neurodivergent peer support groups? Are you already doing so? What do we want to talk about? Go ahead, Amanda.
Hi, this was by far the best, not group, but educational process that I went to today. I got so much out of this, and I would love to join a group and eventually facilitate a group. How do I find groups that are not in person? Because of course I'm not interested in going in person. It's too much social
Yeah.
stuff for me. But how do I find these groups? I am actually Jessica's student. I'm taking her Medi-Cal certification class, but I would love to attend some groups. I think they'd be extremely beneficial for me, not only for me, but for my son, who is over 18 and could go to his own group.
Sure. Great question, Amanda. I put my email in the chat for you. I will invite you to the group that we have. And I know on the heypeers.com platform, there is a peer supporter offering neurodivergent support groups there. And Jessica, does Share have some neurodivergent peer support groups? Share has how many groups? Like 200 groups every week. Like you could go to a peer support group every hour on the hour at Share, like almost all day.
Yeah, I think, after COVID, many meetings are online now. I don't think we have a neurodivergent support group. Although usually when I find out we don't have one, I really try to encourage people to start one. Just because we have space for that, we have time slots for that. And as a meeting center that doesn't have this support group, we're not offering that support for this demographic that need support, right? And so I'm just all about starting a group that we don't have, that especially that feels very needed. So Amanda, if that's something that you want to do for sure, then we can totally talk about it next week when we go to training. If you just stick around after or something, we can talk about starting a group, because I would love that. I think that'd be so great. And then that way, Anne has one. Yours is at Painted Brain, is that right, Anne?
Online. Mine is
Oh,
online.
that's right. That's right. Okay. So, okay. So then that way though, we've got one through Anne's group and then through Share, of course, that'd be really cool. So, okay.
Yeah, thank you. That would be so great. My hope when I proposed doing this was more than anything like to inspire people to create more groups and to make it look easy. Because it really is easy. I mean, if you just hold a warm space, like a safe space, brave space, then the group members will, they will, it's their group too. They want it to work, right? And so, like, I really feel very carried by my group members, when I do this. It is not hard to do this. You just have to be that person who's always like keeping the agreements in mind, making sure you start on time and end on time, making sure everybody gets included. Like you just have to just kind of give it a little structure and be warm, and people are just like so grateful, as the quotes demonstrated. So check in the chat. Okay, yeah, that would be great. Go ahead, Jessica.
You may have answered this already, but to me, I mean, everything that you've talked about sounds, it's exactly like a support group that I go to when I go to NA or AA, so I don't know if you answered this, but like the facilitator, is that ever like rotated? Like do other people like facilitate it if they're feeling up for it?
No, that's a format consideration, right? And what I showed was an example format of a format that has worked for us in this particular group. But by all means, you could create something that was more like a NA or AA, that you had rotated facilitators. I mean, yeah, because I'm not suggesting this is the only format. It's just saying, like the way in this group, they want someone that's a trained facilitator to basically like make sure the train leaves the station on time, make sure nobody falls off the train, blow the whistle when the train's coming into the station. I'm doing all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so this is working, but this by all means is not the only way it could be done. Like,
Totally.
absolutely, I'd love it if next year we had a talk and we had like 5 people doing a roundtable of, well, we do our group like this, and another one, well, we do ours totally different. Because to me, that really does represent the neurodiversity landscape. Is there's certainly not one way to do a group like that.
Yeah. I feel like I feel like the way that you have facilitated yours has been helpful and it's working. And I'm curious also, like, are you ever like willing to essentially like train somebody on how you like the step-by-step like logistics of how you do it so that people can kind of implement the same thing when trying to start a group?
Yeah, I actually like wrote down like a model for it, and then people who are neurodivergent themselves that want to come and be part of the group for a while and just kind of, take take a few journeys with us, the group has been open to having people come as visitors. They do not want persons who don't have lived experience coming. They obviously, if someone is like, I'm a psychology student, we're going to be like, no, that's not going to work for us, right? But if you have lived experience with neurodivergence and you want to come and take a few rides with us, that is a possibility.
Wow, that's so cool. I love
Yeah.
that.
No, my group is great. Okay,
Yeah.
Carla has a group for everybody. Thank you. I'm so glad that you put that because um, this is a group that is facilitated by autistic adults. AutismBC.ca. Thank you. And I also want to see Michaela's comment. You want to create a group through Google Meet. And procrastination is a huge issue. Well, I don't know if you have a partner, you know, a person that might partner with you, but I have personally found having another person can sometimes help me with my procrastination. That has definitely been a big theme of my life, most definitely. So, you know, we'll apply our best motivational interviewing skills to that one and try to figure out, okay, what would be the first teeny tiny step and what could be a motivator. For me, it's usually a friend. Anybody else? I mean, we can be for real here. Yeah, it's true. Share allows other organizations or individuals to create their own groups. Share is like such a big community resource. You know, there's not a lot of organizations that have a heart that big that just let other groups come and list their group on their website. And yeah, so that would be something to think about. Google Meet is integrated with Google Classroom and the whole Google stuff. So like if you're living in a Google universe and you can reach people that might want to come to your group through Google Meet, I think that would be great. There's I believe there's a community on Discord that someone in my group told me about. I have not been over there to check it out, but there is supposed to be like a support group or support community on Discord. Priscilla, please go ahead.
Yes, and thank you for the wonderful presentation. I am curious to know, because since you are also trauma-informed trained, and well, how much of this trauma-informed learning you had, you know, helped you while you facilitate this neurodiversity group? Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. I think the biggest way that the trauma training helped me was because it was somatic, right? That I learned ways to be more present in my own body, which is often a big struggle for those of us that are neurodivergent. And so the somatic trauma trainings, and again, this is not a university, this is like online classes and stuff. Many, you can find them free or inexpensive, but learning how to use my breath, how to use my posture, use my voice, how to ground myself, how to slow down, how to not get overly excited if someone in the room is getting, you know, what's called dysregulated or activated or triggered, how to not just react to that, how to stay more present and more grounded. And people can do that through a variety of things. Like some people do it through meditation or yoga, some people through qigong. There's so many different ways people can have like a grounding practice. But that, I think, is one of the biggest takeaways that I got from the trauma training, is just how to show up, and be like a rock for people. Yes, interoception can be a huge issue. Absolutely. Like that's like, are people aware of what's going on inside of us, not only our emotional states, but our visceral states, like our heartbeat, our respiration, our stomach, are we sweating? And so the aspect of having like the self-awareness practice and the grounding practice, which again, you can get through so many different ways, and often through free continuing ed and things like that. What really helps is it avoids the facilitator getting pulled into any type of conflict, or getting pulled into what is sometimes called like the trauma triangle or the drama triangle. And that's where someone in the group is the villain and someone is the victim, and someone else, sometimes it's the facilitator, is supposed to play the role of the hero and save the victim from the villain. So in support groups, in general, we always want to avoid these triangular relationships, and instead we want everyone to be, to have their own voice, speaking their own lived experience, and others to affirm, those shares. And we don't want to get sidetracked into these triangular situations, because they're often echoes of different traumatic experiences that we have all had, and they can come up quite unconsciously, and before we know it, we're communicating by doing little movies that tell people our trauma narrative. And so the embodiment piece really keeps that from happening in a big way. It's like it just keeps you present. So thanks for asking that question. And let's see, do you have any tips for navigating group dynamics when two or more members' needs conflict? Yes, we do this elephant in the room thing. We, like, usually I'll notice some tension, like someone in one camera is not, they don't seem like they're doing well. And so I'll often, call someone in, and then we have a space where it's very like nonviolent communication. People say what they need. They say what they need. And because we respect each other, no one takes it personally. Now, sometimes we can't work it out, but we try to work it out. And we try to compromise. So maybe someone goes off camera or changes their background. Are you willing to do this to help me meet my need in this moment? And because we're a space where someone can say, I have misophonia, that's where like certain type of noises just really like sets your nervous system off. Other people can say, I cannot be looked at. Like if someone looks at me, I can't be here. And so we have a space where people can very freely say, this is what I deal with. And so actually after a while, a person with some sounds in the background becomes very respectful of the person who gets aggravated by sound, because we get to know each other as a community. And so because we can gently talk about these elephants in the room, and we are we solving our problems together so we can meet our social need of belonging and support, the problems turn out to be actually the best thing that could have happened, because we all grow. And remember back on the slide about what is so valuable about these groups is the skills and the empowerment that we receive through our participation in the group. We can take that into the workplace. We can take that into our roommate situation, into our employment situation, because we have what's sometimes called corrective or reparative experiences in these groups because they're safe spaces and brave spaces. I think you asked like the $1 million question, and I hope I gave you the $1 million answer. I feel like it is in my experience. Well, anything else people want to talk about, or we can like give ourselves an extra bio break because we have the amazing, almost like keynote lecture discussion thing coming up at 5 o'clock. Do you want to say more about that, Jessica?
Yeah. We can also, if everyone wants, we can just hang out. Let's see. Michaela said, I have a free account on Zoom, which only gives me 30 minutes free. Okay. Well, you don't actually have to, like if somebody else creates the meeting, Michaela, I just wanted to add to that because I was chatting with her about it. Like Amanda, for example, wants to start a support group, and you can do it at Share. Share has Zoom accounts. You just have to like book a slot with Share in one of our Zoom rooms. Like this is one of the Zoom rooms that we are in right now, that we typically use this room for meetings, but there aren't any meetings at this time on this particular day. And if there were, we move them to a different Zoom room for the conference. But like you don't have to have an account to get on it. You know, you just have to have the application to get on it. And basically Share will be the host, but without actually being in the meeting, if that makes sense. So like y'all use the Zoom room without like a Share staff person there or anything. Yeah, so if you want to do that, you're more than welcome to reach out to me, and then I can connect you with our meetings team. I mean, if it's something that you're interested in, I think it's worth reaching out to Amanda as well, who's here in this room, who is also interested and excited about starting a support group. So it's possible, you know, I mean, Anne said it herself, right? That having like essentially having like a friend or a buddy to kind of hold you accountable when you feel like you're procrastinating. I feel like it would be helpful to kind of have like a buddy in that, so that you can kind of support each other in that process. But I put my email in the chat. So if we want to just hang out in here, and you were awesome. Do you want me to close out if no one has any other questions?
No. I just don't want people to feel, well, you have to stay until 4:45 because that's the time that they gave us. It's been a long day. People might need to lay down and then get back at 5 o'clock for the keynote. Go ahead, Amanda.
All I have to say is this was an amazing, just really amazing. And I have to say, Anne, you did an amazing job. I am so fulfilled at this moment, and I feel uplifted, and by far ended the day with fireworks.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that it was inspiring and instructive. You know, this is one of the groups I do. I do a trauma recovery group, and then I'm also going to be doing a borderline support group. And I found it's really interesting how certain things kind of seem to intersect in my life, and those are the populations that I tend to want to support. It's so interesting. So, you know, just find your bliss and take a deep breath and keep your feet on the ground, and the courage will come. Go ahead, Amanda.
Please, both of you guys, be looking out for my emails. I will be sending them because I am super feeling motivated, kind of almost emotional at this moment because it was so wonderful. So thank you. But yes, I will be reaching out and emailing you guys.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And I just want to say, you know, building community, like that is what it is about, because it's not like you're like the queen of the the silly thing and everybody just has a relationship with you. Like we do have our supportive relationships, but it's more like servant leadership, and like the people that come to the meetings, they make all of this happen. It's the people that come to your meeting and cultivating their health and cultivating their self-esteem and their healthy relationships with one another. Like that's where the magic is. And thank you to Cher for being so generous with letting people have meetings through your Zoom links and all that stuff. You're real community builders.